Welcome back to Educator.com. This lesson is Documentary Considerations, Part 1 of a two-part lesson. Let's begin. In this lesson, we are going to discuss and talk about the role of the nonfiction filmmaking, which applies to documentaries and documentary-style films. We will be discussing the documentary film language. We will also review documentary styles. And we will touch on the ethics in documentary filmmaking, something that's very important. And we're going to dissect a little bit the elements of documentary production. So there's 3 phases of documentary production. We'll talk about them, how they differ from fiction production. And we'll also discuss and define 3 fundamental components of documentary language. Let's begin. Okay, so what is the role of nonfiction filmmaking? And I'm going to have a whole bunch of questions here. I don't really have the answers. There is no one answer to this, but this is really important as you go out there with your camera to make what we call nonfiction or documentary style or documentaries. Now, more and more today, people have access to mobile, smaller cameras, and one of the main mediums or genres that people are working in is in this nonfiction style. And so it's really important to kind of start to think about, well, what does it mean if I'm making a nonfiction film or video? Well, to that end, you want to think about what is art. Because when you pick up that camera to shoot, a conversation maybe between 2 people, they're not acting. You want to see, well, what's the difference between it being art and just being a documentation of that conversation or news even? So to that end, we want to say, what is cinema? What does it mean? A cinematic art in terms of images and sounds. How do these things relate? And then to that end, what is documentary? How does documentary differ from cinema? And when I use the word cinema, I'm talking now in terms of like a fictionalized art form. How then does documentary also differ from TV news programming, where we go out and we're filming events, we have journalists trying to be objective? How will documentary differ from that? And to that end, what is documentary seeking to do? If it's not seeking to purely document and to reflect to document and report on news, and it's not this fictionalized cinematic art form, what is it trying to do? And if it's trying to get at the truth of something that's human using real people, real events, how does documentary accomplish its goal? Okay, and that's really important. So how does documentary function differently than your cinematic, your fiction films, videos, or your news programming? So I see those as being, as we look at all these different questions, what is art, what is cinema, what is documentary, how does documentary differ from cinema, how does it differ from TV news, and then what does it seek to do? And there is no one answer to that. Okay, what documentary is trying to do. But you do want to start thinking about, well, what makes something a documentary? If there's truth involved in it, but it's truth not with a story that's completely made up, but it's real people. How does it go about accomplishing its goal? Okay, so one of the things that documentary historically, from the beginning of film and video, it has been really important in terms of its relationship to society. It has been one of the most important mediums of kind of reflecting, asking questions, shaking things up, revealing in a way that journalists can't do and in a way that cinematic fiction films can't do, or videos. So documentary and society, it's really important in terms of information. Documentaries inform, that's for sure. They have also served in times to be propaganda, to kind of manipulate in a manipulative way, to give a message, to evoke a feeling, to get people to think a certain way in a very manipulative way. And that's what we would define as our propaganda. It can do that as well. It has been involved in forming and shaping public opinion. But it's also been important to education, to educating people. I can think of certain films, Super Size Me, that did a great job of kind of getting people aware as a documentary of the fast food industry and how people were relating to it, to get people to think about it. It also has really, documentaries can impact public policy. because they do relate to real events and real people and real life, real society. And then to that end, we can talk about them as being a cultural envelope. They, at the same time, they kind of define our culture and kind of create the structure, but they also, we are reflecting the culture in our documentaries as well as help shaping it. So we're doing both.